In the bio, it suggests that you're fascinated by the injustices that leave people hungry when there's food for all. How did you end up there?
That's a good question. I think I started there with my graduate work in South Asia, in southern India, looking at the impact of globalizing markets on a small-scale fishing community and realizing that the idea of an all-you-can-eat buffet of shrimp in the middle of the continent that is landlocked connects us. And it was this interconnection and the way food illustrates that interconnection of people and the land, or in this case, the sea, that started that fascination for me. Following that, I ended up at the Canadian Food Grains Bank, and I was allowed to follow that thread for 6 years, working in public policy, examining exactly that structural injustice in a world that produces enough food for everyone. We've got about a 50-day surplus right now, which is quite low, but we've also got a billion plus people that exist without enough to eat. And it's that dynamic of injustice that through my studies and through my work at the Food Grains Bank, and now through my teaching, that I want to pull at, because I think students hear that and they also sense what is happening there.
So they'd realize we're not really close to an ocean in the middle of Canada.
Yeah, and to illustrate, I do some teaching in environmental studies as well, and this idea of that everything comes from somewhere and there's no such place as away.
Why CMU? Why would this be the place where you would explore those questions?
I feel rooted here. First off, I'm a graduate of one of the founding colleges at CMBC, and I did a theology degree here. And
is there a theological piece in this conversation for you?
Very much so, very much so. The invitation to CMU was exciting for me because the traditional environmentalist worldview left something lacking for me. There was an understanding of the good that needed more unpacking. And it was my earlier studies in theology that provided a route that I wanted to go back to.
What part of your studies are you drawing on when you say being here matters to my study, my environmental teaching?
Well, I think, Wendell Berry, a Kentucky poet, says it best for me. So if I go back to texts that I studied here, his understanding of the Genesis story that we traditionally have of creation of people, that it is body and spirit that equals soul. He pulls that apart and says it's actually dust and breath that God blows into, and argues that we've undervalued the dirt, that stuff that we want to dig our hands in. And I think it's partly authors like that, and then looking at others that are writing about creation care and listening to Gordon Matties talk about it in his biblical and theological studies class on creation, that provide me threads of interconnection, and thinking ecologically, interconnection is part of the standard language that we use.
So is it too simplistic to say if dust shows up in Genesis, then it can show up in our conversation about the environment?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I think fully the idea of dirt and how we engage
that's like a sacred concept.
Yeah, I think so. How we understand the earth, which is soil and which is life, Adama, humus. All of those words revolve around soil. And while the shrimp illustration may be a bit more difficult to get back to soil, issues around food production and farming pull us right back there.
There's a lot in that story, so thanks for sharing it.
Thanks for having me here, David.